Hello, today we are talking about training and how to build the training plan for your salespeople.
Welcome back to Sales Operations for Small Businesses.
So the request for training may come from a few different places, and this is the first place that you want to think about because that will help you to figure out what things you need to prioritize in the training. It could be somebody asking for one specific aspect, one specific thing that they want the salespeople trained in, but I'm telling you now, if the door to training has already been opened beyond what you're teaching them in terms of the administration that they need to do, and how they need to connect with other departments to make sure that information flows, if the request for training is coming, it's never going to be about one thing, ever, 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 ever. Once the door is opened, if you treat it as if it's one aspect they need to be trained in, once the door is opened, once that project has been finished, then you'll have somebody else saying, okay, so the next thing that we need to be trained in is this. And so therefore, because we know that's going to happen, the best thing to do is to set up a training plan from the get-go. Because once you open the door as well to giving people training, even if they don't necessarily ask for it, they'll kind of expect it. Particularly if it's good training that you're giving them, particularly if it's training that they really appreciate and that they've been able to develop from. So again, the first place you want to go is figuring out who's asked you to get this specific bit of training, because whether that's coming from the immediate managers or from senior leadership, you need to figure out the reason why they're asking for it, for that specific bit of training. And, maybe ask them some more questions about why do they think people need it? Because even in some cases, it's a specific person that they're talking about and they're just not being managed well. And because they can't deal with this one specific person, everybody's having to be trained. It's like everybody has to go through detention. And training isn't bad. It's just we do not want to take salespeople's time off the floor, so to speak, for reasons that are not helpful. If they need training, give them training. If they don't need training, let them do their job. There's no reason to just give training for the sake of giving training. It shouldn't be a tick box exercise to say, well, we've provided you with these things, so that's great. If they don't actually need it, it's not helpful, right? So figure out who's been asking for it, why they're actually asking for it, because it could be that they're asking for this one thing and they actually mean it's 3 different things. So get clarity on the scope. Again, treat it like a project. So you want to know what you're actually dealing with. Once you do know what you're dealing with, you're then going to have to figure out a time frame and whether you have budget for this, because again, people say, usually again, the senior leaders, it's actually quite rare that it comes from the salespeople, but people say, yes, we'll give them training without having looked up what the costs are at all. And they end up having conversations with people saying training is coming without actually looking up what the costs are at all. So do your research, figure out if they want the trainer to be external or internal, because those costs will be different. Are you paying for it in time or are you paying for it with cold hard cash? They are different. Get things confirmed, because if you go ahead and charge through and get an external trainer that might meet all of the objectives, but they are outside of the budget that hasn't been approved, because again, people talk before actually finalizing things, then you will have problems, because whilst you're doing all of this research, the conversations are still happening elsewhere in the field to say, yes, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that, because salespeople keep selling. Even if it's the leadership team, even if it's the line managers, because they've had the thought, those words are going to keep coming back in the background all of the time, and then pressure will end up coming onto you saying, well, when is it happening? We're already in June. What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. You weren't given a real brief. So you need to get clear about what it is people need. You need to get clear about whether you've got budget for this. And then you need to get clear on what the salespeople's calendars look like. And I don't mean that you need to know every single time they've got a meeting with a client. I mean that their internal calendar. So as a business, there'll be things going on like quarterly events or monthly events, and things like that. External events that are marketing events that the sales team will be going to. You need to be able to look at the calendar and see where there's actual gaps. And I don't just mean, oh, they've come back from an event on Thursday, so therefore let's do the training on Friday. That doesn't make any sense. People are going to be tired. You need to look at the calendar to know when is the best time, the optimal time to do training. How long is that training even going to be? Is it a day? Is it 2 days? Is it only half a day? Is it a series of bite-sized trainings that are only half an hour? You need to get very, very clear on the calendar to figure out where this training is going to go, whether it's going to be split out over time as well. And then you need to get approval for that. But you need to be able to figure out your reasoning in your own mind before you ask for approval, because if you just give dates, chances are the person who you're asking for approval from, their line managers, the senior leadership team, aren't looking at as closely at the dates as you are. So make sure you're very clear in your mind about the benefits of doing something on a certain time or day. You're then also going to have to make sure you have enough information to be able to send all of the information out as soon as possible to people to know exactly how they need to prepare for the event. You don't want people turning up and being in stony silence. You want to give them what the expectations are, particularly if it's online as well. Because if this is a cameras on event, tell them. If they are not prepared for it to be a cameras on event, and then they're just sitting there with their camera off, then it embarrasses them. Which, yes, to be fair, some people would say, well, if it's a big thing like that, you should expect everybody to have their cameras on. You should. But there's no need to shame people by just unnecessarily, give people what the expectations are so that they have a hope of actually meeting them. Okay. So you're looking at the scope, you're clarifying everything that you need. You're trying to plan things out accordingly, and then you're setting expectations. You have to also set yourself some KPIs of when you expect to see improvements. And this is really important, because if you do not actively set them, then managers and the senior leadership team are going to expect miracles, and they'll expect those miracles immediately. You need to figure out how you are going to measure improvement. Even if it's a case of, even if you don't have numbers for it, you can take anecdotal assessment of where the salespeople feel like they are now on a certain topic before the training. And then after the training, you can ask them again in 1 month's time, 3 months' time, 6 months' time, and then you can at least see, based on what people are saying verbatim, whether they've improved. It's not everything that can actually be done with numbers, okay? But it's not impossible. So that's the very high level of the things that you need to do, because obviously you need to source this training. You need to be able to look at reviews for the trainer if it's external. If it's internal, that's much better. But sometimes people respect people more when it's coming from somebody that's external, if that makes sense. I don't know why. It's not fair. It doesn't help things. But depending on the culture of your organization, they could receive the training from somebody internally, or they would need somebody external. And it could change depending on what the training is. If it's time management, for example, I'm just going to take that on and train someone, because I've been training people for years in that as one of the things. So that, there's no need for me to go out and find somebody else unless there's a very, very, very specific issue. So that's high level of things that you need to do. Again, treat things like a project, because this is going to be rolling. And then also one of the things that you're going to want to do as well is not just getting feedback from them about how they've improved after the event. It's about the type of training that you're giving them. Ask people how they feel it should be improved. And don't make it a general question like that. Be specific. Do you think the length was good? How do you rate the trainer in terms of their communication style, particularly if you're speaking to people who are who have multiple languages. If English isn't their first language, you want to be really, really careful that whoever's doing the training is aware of that, so that they're not speaking as fast as they could speak, because I know I get carried away with that as well. So those are the things that you need to think about. Again, think about everything like a project, but training is really important. You just have to get very, very, very clear on the what and the why, and put things in order based on what you feel would be most beneficial. Obviously, you have to get that authorization from the people who are signing off and all of this stuff, but you need to go through that thought process first. because what you think might be most beneficial, when you then actually speak to the line manager, that's when they reveal more information and say, well, do you know what? Actually, we've been struggling with negotiation a lot. Let's move that up because we've got something else going on. We've got this event going on where we know we're going to have to be speaking to a lot of people and bringing them on time, and that will actually help. So I hope that has helped you. I enjoy creating training plans. It can be quite difficult, but it's so very, very beneficial. So if you have any questions, let me know your thoughts as well in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you, like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify or any other podcast, please also subscribe there. And you can comment anywhere where you're getting this, basically, and I will read it and I will reply. Also, please do look out for the Q&A sessions that are starting on the 23rd of May. So it will be every single Tuesday for 30 minutes, where I will be there live answering your questions on anything to do with sales operations for small businesses. You'll be able to find the link in the show notes. See you next time.